It's Monday, November 16. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. According to the Meteorological Service, Hurricane Iota is moving toward the west near 17 kilometers per hour. It is on a trajectory toward Central America, packing maximum sustained winds of near 230 kilometers per hour. The system is now classified as a Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Locally, there's a trough across Jamaica associated with Hurricane Iota. This afternoon, expect mostly cloudy and windy with isolated thunderstorms, mainly across southern parishes. Tonight should be mostly cloudy conditions. On Tuesday, scattered afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms are forecast, mainly across southern parishes. Jamaica Defense Forces servicemen worked alongside residents of Wees Road in Bull Bay with cleanup efforts following torrential rains that resulted in damage to homes and infrastructure. We have more in this report.
Torrential rains dumped several inches of water on the community of Wees Road in Bull Bay, leaving many homes flooded. The waters are gone, leaving in its wake shell-shocked residents, some devastated after losing their homes and all their possessions. Despite the loss, there are glimmers of hope, as they are not alone. In the aftermath of the rain, cleanup is underway with help from the servicemen and women of the Jamaica Defense Force. They rolled up their sleeves and helped to haul away piles of debris lying in front and inside homes. They used tractors to snatch up debris on the streets, which were then fed into the back of trucks and hauled away. The wreckage from the formerly flooded streets are no more, and the ability to travel along Wees Road restored. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Carol Francis.
From as far back as July 1994, the private volunteer group, the Dispute Resolution Foundation, was established to encourage the use of alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, techniques throughout Jamaica. Mediation is one such technique. Today, Justice Minister Delroy Chuck is urging Jamaicans to choose mediation to resolve conflicts. Mr. Chuck says the country is working to improve the Restorative Justice Act, and a draft Mediation Act is in the works. He discussed the choice of mediation instead of court action during a recent think tank session with the Jamaica Information Service. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck says using alternative dispute resolution methods will speed up the delivery of justice.
We have far too many matters going to court. So the end result is cases are now being set for 2025, 2026, and in some cases, 2027. Now, to my mind, when you set matters so far down the road, beyond the next 3 years, I believe for the litigants, it's a lose-lose situation. There's no way either party benefits from having a matter drag on for years.
Mediation is a technique used by parties to resolve disputes with the assistance of a trained, impartial third person who assists them in reaching a mutual resolution.
Once the Mediation Act is finalized and passed in Parliament, my great hope is that more litigants will seek to use mediation, because when you use mediation, it is a win-win situation. Both parties will have to give and take. And once they give and take and come to a settlement, it's a win-win situation. It also means that less matters will be before the court for trial, and therefore, if less matters get to the court, then those that actually must be decided in the courts can be dealt with in a more timely manner. But we must get away from the Jamaican posture. It's all or nothing. So you have a dispute with someone and you believe it must be all or nothing. We have to be careful that when we go for all or nothing, we end up getting nothing.
Minister Chuck says restorative justice and justice centers are strategically located across the island.
At least one in every parish, and we also have restorative justice centers in many communities Trench Town, Tivoli, Denham Town, Spanish Town, many communities, Granville, many communities across Jamaica. And we hope that where there are simmering conflicts that oftentimes end up in violence, so often end up in death, that at the initial stages, respectable members in the communities, also the police officers, justice of the peace, can get the parties to go to the justice centers, the restorative justice centers, and resolve as many of these disputes as possible.
Electrical connections and inspection should now run smoothly under the new electricity regulations. The Electrical Work Registration and Licensing Regulations 2020 was approved in the lower house of representatives on October 27 of this year. The upper house of the Senate added its assent on Friday. Leader of Government Business, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, guided this vital piece of legislation through the sitting. The Electrical Work Registration and Licensing Regulations 2020 is expected to facilitate an increase in the number of licensed electrical inspectors from the 9 currently serving the island, and this should speed up the inspection process. Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith explains.
There has been an increase in demand in the number of persons seeking to be connected to the grid. I understand, Mr. President, that they receive close to 35,000 applications for inspection annually, but there are very few inspectors. So these regulations will provide a framework which will allow for an increase in the number of licensed inspectors available, which will be a massive improvement in our developmental capacity. Mr. President, what occurs now is that the delays between submission of work for inspection and actual inspection are almost always unduly lengthy and frustrating for residential customers.
Senator Johnson-Smith says the new regulation is linked to Section 51, subsection 1 of the Electricity Act 2015, which provides for the privatization of electrical inspection functions that were previously conducted solely by the government.
So with the passing of the Electricity Act 2015, the 1890 Act was repealed. So under the Electricity Act, the one which we have now, the GER is designated the regulator for the work that is done by licensed electrical inspectors and registered electricians in relation to electrical installations, wiring, or works. So the GER will have responsibility for, or has responsibility for, vetting license applications from persons desirous of being licensed as inspectors and making recommendations to the Minister of Energy, the registration of electricians, the monitoring of work done by inspectors, recommending revocations or suspensions of licenses of inspectors and registered electricians, investigating and seeking to resolve complaints regarding work or conduct of licensed inspectors, and conducting random audits of installations certified by licensed inspectors. So Jamaicans will be pleased to note that the regulations will be implemented, or the process will be implemented, through a digital platform that will ensure quick applications, quick notifications and alerts where there are issues or actions to be taken, seamless uploads and updating of their records, and the provision of feedback on applications.
Senator Johnson-Smith also explains that the new electricity regulations will facilitate professional development since registered electricians will be continuously monitored.
So electricians can be confident that they have their work inspected properly and certified, so they can finalize jobs and move on to the next, so they can do more business in good time. And of note is also the possibility for individuals to be registered as both inspectors and electricians, although, of course, as you will hear when we go through, you can't inspect your own work.
Junior practitioners were not left out of the new developments. Under the regulations, technical electrical assistants will now have a formalized framework under which they will operate during periods of apprenticeship.
We would all have encountered them as the apprentice who comes to a site with the senior electrician and they're learning on the job. They will now have a formalized framework as well, and this will be an opportunity to, in fact, build out more structured apprenticeship programs, allowing for them to be formally engaged, formally trained, and to lift themselves up and move up the line in terms of doing better and doing more as registered and regulated professionals. The fees laid out in the regulations, Mr. President, are well within reach of persons who are already engaged in the industry and those who may wish to join.
We continue to monitor the numbers from the COVID-19 pandemic on the island. Here's the latest from the health authorities.
45 new COVID-19 cases were reported over the past 24 hours. These figures pushed the overall case count to 9,929, of which 4,237 are active cases. No deaths were reported over the same period, with that total remaining at 231. 82 persons have recovered from the virus, bringing that tally to 5,330. 16 patients are moderately ill and 6 are critical at this time. A total of 88 infected persons are currently in hospital. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
The tribute concert, dubbed Farewell to a Cultural Icon, was dedicated to Jamaican entertainer Frederick Toots Hibbert, who died on September 11, 2020. The event was organized by the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport and had the support of Toots Hibbert's family. Marlon Samuels provides the highlights.
The star-studded lineup for the Toots Tribute to Cultural Icon concert was backed by the incredible reggae band Fab 5. The musical acts included Toots Hibbert's daughter, along with some of the biggest reggae acts celebrating his life and musical works.
Hear the man say, pressure drop, pressure drop, pressure drop on you, pressure drop, pressure drop. Pressure drop on you.
Reggae pioneer Marcia Griffiths also performed her favorite Toots Hibbert song.
I'll never grow old. I never.
Others, including Willie Nelson, in paying homage, spoke of their unique partnership with Toots, his influence on them, and reggae.
He was a great guy, a great musician. We did an album together, we hung out together, so have a good trip, Toots.
I don't own no land.
Now listen, I've got muscle and I've got brain. I don't mind the sun and rain. I gotta make a little change, as I'm a worried man.
Toots meant reggae.
He was truly Jamaica's Picasso of music.
Toots meant funk.
And that voice is such a gift. I mean, there are so few of the people left who have a direct connection to where the music started.
Toots was a we are head of everything.
I'm glad during the last part of his career, he was making new music.
His music is revolutionary, really.
The tribute concert celebrated his musical legacy and his life.
His humility was something that just pulled everybody in to appreciating him and loving him. When I think of those who have paved the way so that Jamaica could be outstanding right across the world for its music, particularly reggae music, I can think of Toots. Toots helped to establish the Jamaica Festival Song Competition. Toots was the first winner. And to see that 50 odd years after, Toots Hibbert decided that he would enter the competition again.
Eternal Father, bless our land.
just to help to resuscitate it, to revive it, to send the message that this is an important competition, it's an important brand, and he wanted people to give it the support.
He was passionate about music as well as his relationship with others, which endeared him to Jamaica and the world.
If you stand up for those down on their knees and lend a voice to those who cannot speak, if you shine a little light, give sight to the ones who've lost their way, there's a place for people like you. I've heard up there the streets are made of gold, and when you get there, there's a hand to hold.
We at the PBCJ joined with his family and the world in honoring cultural icon Frederick Toots Hibbert. For the news on PBCJ, I am Marlon Samuels.
Uncle Toots.
My name is Toots and the Meters, the inventor for the world record.
The Business Report with host Gabriel Thompson gives a comprehensive look at the ebbs and flows of the financial markets.
In Friday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index declined by 1,247 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 77 stocks, of which 27 advanced, 39 declined, and 11 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 13 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica, AMG Packaging and Paper Company, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. Trading firm were Berger Paints Jamaica, CAC 2000 Limited, and Carreras Limited. Diamond Trading Company Limited was the volume leader with 9.5 million units, followed by JMMB Group Limited with over 3 million units, and Kingston Wharves Limited also with over 3 million units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Friday, November 13, ended trading at $147.94. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $112.82. The pound sterling traded for $195.61, and the euro ended trading at $175.32. Oil prices climbed on Monday, recouping some losses from the previous session as new data showed a rebound in the world's second and third largest economies, China and Japan. Brent crude futures gained 78 cents to $43.56 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures added 83 cents to $40.96 a barrel. And that does it for this edition of the Business Report on PBCJ. I'm Gabriel Thompson.
In news from across the region, in Trinidad and Tobago, farmers in Margoa are battling another locust infection which has destroyed all their crops. As a result, the farmers are warning consumers to brace for higher prices for local fruits and vegetables for Christmas and the New Year. Karen Cozier-Phillip reports.
Moruga is often labeled as the food basket of Trinidad and Tobago. The farmers boast of growing the sweetest watermelon and the hottest peppers. But over the past 2 weeks, fields of watermelon, pumpkin, sweet peppers, tomatoes, bodi and melangen have been attacked by swarms of locusts.
After they feed on the leaves of the plant, they are actually feeding on the stalks of the plant and by extension even on the fruit. For example, pumpkin and pawpaw. Right? They are feeding on the fruit itself when there is nothing else to feed on.
Mr. Agbear says the Ministry of Agriculture has responded and sent personnel into the fields to spray the locusts. But this is not enough.
The locusts have beds into the forest, into the forested areas, right? And what happens is that after feeding, they go into these beds and they lay their eggs. And when they lay their eggs there, they hatch. So if 10,000 go in, you have to multiply that by 30. And that is how much coming back out. 10,000 times 30.
The farmers say they've spent thousands of dollars on fertilizer, plants and seedlings and now have nothing to get in return. They're asking for some type of compensation.
We don't want the money for free, but give us a loan in which we can go back and start to replant, start back all over again. And what I mean a soft loan, that we could go to ABD and get a loan with a low percentage, maybe 1% or no percent or 2%, and help the farmers to be back in their feet again.
Contacted for comment, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambarat, says it is normal at this time of the year for the mature locusts to be up in the trees, gorging leaves before heading off to the forest to lay. He says they die after laying and getting rid of the eggs during the laying period, and the young ones before they can fly is an ongoing exercise of the ministry. Minister Rambarat says there is no compensation for pest damage. Karen Cozier-Phillip, TTT News.
The National Emergency Management Advisory Committee has rolled out a new set of stiffer penalties to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus in St. Lucia. Health officials fear that if the virus is not contained in quick time, the island's numbers could triple in short order. The command center provided the nation with an update.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belmar George warned Friday that failure to adhere to the new protocols implemented by authorities could result in an even more damaging increase in COVID-19 cases. The total number of patients has skyrocketed in just 3 weeks, going from 28 to 160, with 4 new cases on Friday, November 13th. St. Lucia was also rocked by the death of 2 prominent citizens this week. Amid growing concern over the island's healthcare capacity, authorities are reverting to more stringent measures.
It puts us at this stage in a very critical position where if we don't work to break the chain of transmission with immediate effect, it would lead to our forecasting and our projections over the next 14 days to almost tripling the numbers that we are noting to date.
The protocols outlined by the Prime Minister include suspension of all social gatherings, church services and funerals limited to 25 people, weddings suspended, all sporting events suspended, home gatherings including inviting family members to your home suspended for 2 weeks, work from home where possible, a 9 p.m. closure of all business places, and bars must close at 4 p.m. But alcohol sales have been restricted to what authorities term grab and go. Shastny says policymakers will decide the next step based on the report of the CMO and her team.
It is sad that despite the increase in number of cases and the announcement of 2 deaths, that as recent as yesterday, the police arrested somebody suspected of coming in through the back door. It's sad that some persons would put their life at risk to go to Martinique. Sadly, the boat encountered problems and 2 fishermen lost their lives. It's sad that persons continue to go to bars and hang out outside. It's sad that persons were continuing to have beach parties. We need to take this thing seriously, St. Lucia.
Deputy Commissioner of Police Milton Daisy says law enforcement has observed widespread non-compliance at a number of levels and concurs with the government's decision to implement stiffer protocols which take effect on Monday, November 16th.
We saw the continuation of persons coming in through illegal means, and that so much so that last week we took in at least four individuals who had entered the island through the back door, as we say. Also, we are still getting complaints on the buses where persons not complying with especially the drivers, the total number of persons that they need to carry.
The officials contend that the island is headed down a perilous path that may result in the loss of more lives to the pandemic if there is a lack of compliance with the stiff protocols. Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
Still in St. Lucia, despite warnings from health officials about containing the spread of COVID-19, Culture Minister Fortuna Belrose is defending the government's decision to proceed with a major tourism event despite the pandemic, the Atlantic Rally Cruisers, ARC. We have the details in this report.
Questions are being raised about plans to proceed with the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers, while cultural activities have been shelved due to the global health crisis. The ARC is the largest transoceanic sailing event in the world and the first major activity since the COVID-19 virus was declared a pandemic. The rally attracts over 200 boats that sail across the Atlantic from Gran Canaria to St. Lucia. However, this year, strict health and safety protocols will be in place due to the pandemic. These protocols include a COVID-19 PCR test and the wearing of wristbands to differentiate non-quarantine participants from those cleared for movement by port and health authorities. Culture Minister Fortuna Belrose says the duration of the ARC is in keeping with the 14-day quarantine period, and thus the event received the green light.
The protocols continue to hold with respect to anybody coming into St. Lucia, and so for the participants, they would have to do their various tests. And of course, they spend 14 days on the sea, which is the period of time that is quarantine anyway. You understand? And so by the time they get here, they would also be tested. And so that's 14 days later or more, depending on when they arrive. And so we don't see any major issue, you understand, with respect to any major spread of COVID, during that time. Because if they've been on the waters for over 14 days, which is a period of time, the quarantine period would have been here. If they are sick when they arrive, that would be picked up because we have strengthened the protocols, at our Rodney Bay Marina, where they would be coming through. And so we don't anticipate any major challenge.
Belrose acknowledges that ARC organizers expect a drop in numbers for this year's event.
When you look at activities, you have to look at the nature and the type of event that it is. When you look at the ARC is an event that allows for participation of persons in an event that lasts over 14 days on the sea. And so to my mind, or to our minds, the ARC is on. Of course, it would be, from what we know, based on COVID and the impact of COVID in the European region, it would be significantly reduced in terms of the numbers of participants this year.
The rally is hosted by the St. Lucia Tourism Authority in collaboration with Events Company of St. Lucia and the Health Ministry. The Culture Minister says the activity will benefit the tourism sector.
Tourism is one of the key lifelines within our community, and we have to continue to work to ensure that our society and our people are fed and kept comfortable. Today we have 1/3 of the persons within the sector going back to work, and we are quite happy to see that. We have to learn to live with COVID, and this is what we are doing as a government to ensure that people continue to adhere to the protocols and do all it takes to ensure that our citizens are safe, within this pandemic era.
The ARC is set to commence next week, and sailors are expected to be in St. Lucia by early December. About 454 crew members are expected to participate in the 31st edition of ARC and ARC Plus, 37 of whom are children. Colby DeVoe, HTS News Force.
In sports, the International Olympics Committee President Thomas Bach says that all those who intend to travel to Japan for next year's postponed Tokyo Games will be encouraged to be vaccinated. Bach stopped short of saying the move will be mandatory, but his stance suggests that the rule will be strongly pushed. He was speaking from Japan on Monday. The Games, which were scheduled to be held this year, were postponed 8 months ago owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's our package. On behalf of our hard-working production team, thanks for making it PBCJ. We are the People's Station.